So here's a story from my youth. When I was a kid, my parents weren't the most adamant about giving me new games to play. They were expensive, they were always an argument waiting to happen between my brother and I, and they were annoying to listen to in the living room. So, no new releases for me. No old ones either, as long as they were still above an arbitrary price point my parents would move the goalposts on in order to feel whimsy. But I was a smart kid, and I found a loophole. A weird loophole. A loophole which forever changed the course of my relationship with games. See, over at Cousin Vazquez's house, little old GC could play all the games he wanted. Hyperzone, Super Mario 64, the Ocarina of Time. My cousin's world was my oyster, until I had to go home or until my cousin got sick of having me in their room. It was a 7-year difference, so I get it. They probably had things to do. Weird teenager things we don't talk about because it's weird and scary and teenagers are gremlins. Borrowing Cousin Vazquez's games wasn't unheard of, but it was rare, and I had a pretty bad track record of losing them. But Cousin Vazquez also had strategy guides. Strategy guides for all sorts of games. Official ones, unofficial ones, an entire shelf on a bookcase's worth of ones. Aha! Little GC might not be able to use the Super Nintendo or the Nintendo 64 while his cousins are using it, but he can read strategy guides. He can borrow strategy guides. And suddenly one day, scanning over a really funky Super Mario 64 strategy guide with the price tag still on the front, it hit me. Strategy guides are cheaper than video games. And they're books! And boy howdy do I love reading. I don't know if you know this, but there's 100 different ways to read a strategy guide. You can put it next to you or on your lap as you play whatever game it's for, turning the pages as you move from one level to the next. Or you can read it like a damn book. Yeah, like a book, a novel, a story, a book. Strategy guide authors can be inspired to write little narratives in their instructions. They exclaim about plots unfolding, character deaths, cool rising actions. A strategy guide author knows how to foreshadow future events and build up to a climax. They have to do this to keep pace with the game they're writing about, and when a strategy guide gets it just right, ooh, yeah, hell yeah. Instead of buying and playing games, I would often buy and or read strategy guides to games I couldn't or didn't have. Didn't matter if it was a mini guide inside a magazine or a Prima official one, I was there. I'd read them front to back and follow along with the writing as it covered every game mechanic, as it described in detail every level with included pictures, as it would fill me in on NPCs and add quirky bits of sarcasm for flavor. It turns out these text-based Let's Plays were lovely to sit down and absorb. And this is how I grew attached to a lot of games as a kid. Before I learned to speedrun Super Mario 64, I read about how to grab all the stars in a strategy guide. Before I laughed my way through Donkey Kong 64, I was shouting "what" at King K. Rool's island-mounted death cannon through the pages of a strategy guide. Before I chickened out of playing Siren, I was looking over my shoulder to check for ghosts, reading through a strategy guide. And I knew those games front to back by the time I played them. I was a walking encyclopedia of games I never played, and I loved them. Now, I told you this story to tell you another one. Of all the strategy guides I've read, there's one game I never found the closure for. One I never found the time to play despite it being one of the most compelling, satisfying reads I've had, until now. And it's the greatest game I've ever read. In a parallel world, Link must stop the moon from plummeting into Clocktown, a city where time is everything. Link has only 72 hours to prevent disaster and track down the Skull Kid who wears Majora's mask, the evil relic that has doomed the town. With an arsenal of magical masks of his own and some time-traveling know-how, Link will be able to face off against evil. The time has come. With the inside help from the pros at Nintendo, you'll have the time of your life. It may surprise you to learn just how many people worked on old-school strategy guides back in the day. Of course, it took an entire staff of writers and artists, fact-checkers and editors, project managers, and even a dedicated map person to paint the pages of the Majora's Mask strategy guide. And it was no exception to the strategy guide production rule. Just one of those things we overlook or never think about when it comes to video game accessories. The Majora's Mask official Nintendo Power Strategy Guide is wonderfully written, with clever subheadings and an organized layout which allows for easy readability and quick reference lookup. Detailed maps and aerial views of various fields and dungeons, all marked with reference markers pointing to brief explanations on how to collect a certain item or further progression, make for an accurate walkthrough. Alternative strategies are sometimes provided for challenges when they're available, giving players struggling to heed the advice given a second option that will hopefully work for them. I can give you a full review of this strategy guide as the product it was intended to be, but it won't tell you about the way it informs one's perception of the world it's guiding them through. How it made me believe in a completely different kind of Majora's Mask for years before I finally played it only some months ago. The Majora's Mask Strategy Guide review won't explain how the writing refers to Link's transformations as his alter egos and commonly describes them using a first-name basis. As Dormani, you should be able to quell the crying Goron child. Mikau is an agile fighter, but like the nameless Deku Scrub, is adverse to fire. Be mindful of precarious platforms over hot areas. My version of Majora's Mask saw Link join forces with the spirits of other heroes, tagging each other in to solve dilemmas or perform feats the others couldn't. Rather than masks, they were people, sharing a single body, channeling themselves through the masks Link would collect. In my Majora's Mask, Link was an avatar, a medium, a flesh mech, and the mystic elements found in the game were in the foreground of my mind. Aided by the dire tone of the strategy guide's writing, the character deaths encountered in Majora's Mask seemed more grandiose. The masked heroes were all tragic tales of failed heroism, futile deaths of lone action, and lonely ends. All separated from their loved ones, trying to do the right thing in a world seemingly full of static people. People like Kafei and Anju, star-crossed lovers waiting for a sign from the other on what to do next. Or the mayor and his wife, one caught in an endless meeting, the other stalling for an investigator who will never arrive. My Majora's Mask was a tale of action against a world suffering from paralysis, of the hopelessness in taking action alone, of what's possible when we come together, ask for help, and assist one another. My Majora's Mask was also a strange collection of misremembered plot points and non-existent secrets. Believing in my heart of hearts that the Deku Scrub was a prince and the butler of the royal Deku family had murdered him and left the corpse to rot in the Lost Woods. A strange belief, almost certainly produced by the strategy guide using the subtitle "The Butler Did It" in reference to the butler race at the end of the first temple arc. One I asserted was the case until, quite embarrassingly, I was corrected live on stream by Majora's Mask itself. I also incorrectly assumed Dormani was the father of the Goron baby wailing inside Goron Cavern, thanks to another subtitle used for the Goron races, Papa was a rolling stone. The pictures in the strategy guide filled me with headcanons and theories validated and debunked as my playthrough of Majora's Mask continued. In fact, something Majora's Mask's official strategy guide failed to get across was the sheer amount of eccentricity to be found in Majora's Mask. The Skeleton King and his cohorts were not the ominous force the images in the guide made them out to be, and discovering they were quite goofy added levity to my quest. Even Majora had this playful trickster attitude I didn't pick up on when reading. Above all, what threw me off about playing Majora's Mask was how familiar it felt despite never having played it. I would think, oh yeah, this room, as I trudged through Snowhead Temple. I knew where to find pieces of heart and from the outset made beelines to easily collectible masks. And I got excited with the chance to beat Majora using the Fierce Deity mask once again. Once again? This sudden feeling of having been here before was an epiphany. I had Majora's Mask nostalgia without the Majora's Mask experience. Or maybe my time spent reading and rereading those pages was more effective than I thought. I experienced Majora's Mask through a different medium than the expected one, yet it yielded similar results. Realizing I had effectively played through Majora's Mask without ever picking up a controller, feeling like I was returning to an experience rather than cultivating an entirely brand new one, it got me thinking, do we ever need the controller in our hands? Do you need to play a video game to know you're going to like it? Can we become invested in those experiences through alternative means of consumption? My validating experience with Majora's Mask had me thinking, I've been playing games my entire life. How many do I need to play before I'm able to tell whether or not I'm going to like one before playing it? Aren't I experienced enough to know when something looks janky or off about a game? Have I not played enough turn-based RPGs to tell when one has a battle system I'm not going to like? At some point, my ability to judge for myself what is and isn't a game I enjoy has to outgrow the limitations of needing to push buttons to figure it out. As an enthusiast, I'm also informed by games I've already played and come away from each one understanding a little more about my personal tastes. Surely, I should at least be able to read about games and come to enjoy them in principle or in concept. It's not a secret the gaming community has a bad track record of playing gatekeeper to the hobby. If you don't finish the game, you don't get to have a valid opinion on it. If you haven't played the game, you're not allowed to cosplay the characters or talk about the art or the music. We've spent a lot of time preventing others from being included, and we like to create qualifiers for what constitutes acceptable consumption of this media. We continue to pigeonhole what counts as being a fan of games in order to protect those games from criticism. Ironically, I think gamers are afraid of hearing criticism, positive or negative, about games they hold a strong emotional connection to, in fear of it not aligning with their personal feelings. We don't want to feel misaligned with the rest of the crowd. We don't want other people spreading what we see as misinformation to others about the games we play, because we don't want our take on the subject to get buried underneath a more popular one. So we build walls to keep others out. We create an arbitrary obstacle course for them to vault through in order to be counted. This gut feeling I had about only ever having read Majora's Mask and not played it probably stemmed from thinking I'd never have my thoughts accepted by the rest of the community. But we are weird, because at the same time, we've invented new ways to experience said media through other people. We look to streamers for live reactions and highly skilled gameplay. We watch Let's Plays to observe others playing games we might be unable to play ourselves. Video essays fill out our desire to know more about specific games or concepts related to games. So even though gatekeeping is still prevalent in our community, we're also hungry for alternative ways to experience video games outside of playing them ourselves. If there's hundreds of ways to read a strategy guide, then there's at least 100 ways to play a video game too. Our understanding of what a game is, how it plays, and whether or not we like it is growing beyond needing to push buttons. And I think it's for the best, really. There's so many more games out there now than ever before, and the time we have to enjoy them is shrinking every day. The ones we play are getting longer, the ones we don't are becoming more expensive, and we're losing access to older titles by the minute now. I fear that pretty soon, gaming is going to become inaccessible for a large portion of its existing audience, as it's pushed further into a luxury hobby people can't afford or access. I think even now, there's people who can't play games and do so vicariously through someone or something else. Young and interested, like I was, back when I wanted to find a way to play games I couldn't. Back when I picked up a strategy guide and reveled at the opportunity to appreciate something always out of reach. We take for granted our ability to play games the traditional way, and tend to forget how many people wish they could too. And I think keeping people out of the conversation just because their experience was different is missing out on some exciting interpretations of the media. Ones with avatar heroes, paralyzing doom, and murderous butlers. I'll always consider reading Majora's Mask my first playthrough, and I'll never deny another person's experiences because of it. The pages of that strategy guide are forever burned into my brain. The story felt as powerful as any other, and I think that's all that really matters.